I'm Cassidy Harper. I'm 34, and I'm the daughter nobody remembers until they need something written. I've ghostwritten speeches that got standing ovations, essays that won national contests, and social media captions that went viral. But none of those had my name on them. Not even once. Sometimes not even a thank you. And the worst part? Half the time, the people clapping were my own family, thinking someone else wrote the words I gave away for free. I grew up in a house where being seen was currency. My dad was a documentary filmmaker who made serious stuff: war, climate, social injustice. His awards covered our living room wall like wallpaper. My mom was a screenwriter who won an Emmy before she was 30. My brother? Anchor at a major news network by 32. Me? I like to write. Not for the spotlight. Not for applause. Just because it helped me make sense of things. But in my family, if your name wasn't on a screen or in a credits list, you didn't exist. When I was 15, I wrote an article for the school paper about our cafeteria workers being overworked and underpaid. It got picked up by a local blog. My dad barely looked up from his coffee. My mom said, "Just don't be too political this early in your career. It'll follow you." What career? I was still doing homework at the kitchen table. By the time I hit 20, I stopped showing them anything I wrote. But they still found ways to use me. My brother once called, frantic before a panel. "Can you write me a quick intro? Like, something moving but not dramatic?" I wrote the whole speech. He didn't change a word. Got a standing ovation. Later, he said, "Man, I really delivered that one, huh?" No mention of who wrote it. I let it go. I kept letting it go. Even when my mom emailed me a draft of her new script and said, "Can you clean this up? You have a good ear for rhythm." She didn't mean edit. She meant rewrite. I spent the weekend fixing her Act 2, building transitions, shaping the emotional arc. She sold it 3 months later and thanked her longtime collaborator, her agent in the press. At that point, I stopped helping. I didn't stop writing. I just stopped sharing. I took on ghostwriting gigs online, built a little portfolio. Eventually, I had clients, real ones, people who paid, people who credited me, privately at least. I wasn't famous, but I was making rent. On my own. Quietly. Then last fall, my cousin emailed me an invitation. Family dinner at my parents' house. Nothing fancy. Just a gathering of creative minds, whatever that meant. I showed up wearing black jeans and a sweater, clutching a pie I bought on the way. Inside, it was the usual scene. My brother talking about ratings. My mom telling a director how she almost cast the lead differently. My dad opening a bottle of something expensive he couldn't pronounce. Then, during dinner, my mother raised her glass and said, "I want to toast something special. I was just featured in Women of Voice, and they highlighted a quote from my upcoming book. I'd like to share it." She cleared her throat and recited, "Silence isn't absence. It's survival." Everyone murmured. Someone even clapped. My aunt said, "That's so powerful, Claire." I froze, my fork midair, because I wrote that line. For a trauma therapist? 2 months ago. In a piece I'd ghostwritten and signed an NDA for. And now my mother was quoting it. As her own. I looked at her. Looked at my brother. He just kept chewing. I excused myself, locked the bathroom door, and stood there staring at myself in the mirror. My mom had just publicly stolen my work. Again. And I was the only one who knew. Or so I thought. Until I got a text. From someone at the table. I didn't talk to my parents much after that dinner. You know the kind of silence I mean. Not the angry, door-slamming silence. Just the kind where everything you'd want to say has already been said in your head, and you know nothing you say out loud will make a difference. They thought I was working remotely for some startup, something vague enough that it satisfied polite dinner conversation, but forgettable enough that no one ever followed up. And I let them think that. In reality, I was building a ghostwriting studio from scratch. It started with one client, a nervous, well-meaning yoga coach who wanted to launch her authentic empowerment brand. I rewrote her entire website, helped script her videos, crafted her emails. A month later, she was featured in a mindfulness newsletter with over 1 million subscribers. She referred 2 clients, then 4, then 10. Within a year, I had a wait list. And not just for wellness coaches. I had a VC firm hire me to write the founding myth for a partner who'd flunked out of college but wanted to sound like Steve Jobs with better grammar. A senator's office contacted me to polish her campaign memoir, which really meant ghostwrite it from scratch using her bullet point notes and 3 grainy childhood photos. I built voices, legacies, and public personas for people who didn't know how to tell their own story, or didn't want to admit someone else was doing it for them. Meanwhile, my own story? It stayed quiet. I paid my bills in full, sent my taxes on time, kept screenshots of bylines I'd never claim. When people asked what I did, I said, communications. And when my mom called and said things like, your cousin Brian just got a job at CNN's production team. Maybe you should consider something more structured. I bit my tongue and said, that's great for Brian. But the part that stung the most wasn't the condescension. It was the erasure. Because somewhere along the way, my mom, the Emmy-winning screenwriter, the woman who once spent 4 days editing my 7th grade essay to teach me about structure, started quoting my work back to me. Except she didn't know it was mine. One night during a family Zoom call, she said, I read this brilliant quote from a young thought leader today. Silence isn't absence, it's survival. Just perfect. That kind of language makes me believe in the next generation. I had written that line 2 months earlier for a trauma therapist launching her podcast. And I sat there, camera on, smiling, nodding, while my own words were praised, as long as they were detached from me. I know some people would call that poetic justice, but it didn't feel like justice. It felt like watching someone wear your clothes and act like they bought them. I kept going. The studio expanded. I brought on 2 junior writers and an assistant. We had systems, style guides, NDAs longer than some of the books we ghostwrote. And I still hadn't told my parents a damn thing. Then came the turning point. A new client showed up in my inbox through a referral, said she was organizing a major fundraising gala for educational equity and needed a keynote speech, a tight narrative arc, something that would move people to tears but also open their wallets. Her name? Claire Hartman. My mother. She didn't recognize my LLC name, obviously. Didn't know it was me reading her brief, drafting her opening story, cleaning up the messy metaphors and overworked slogans. Didn't know it was me who took her stale opening line, let's build a better future together, and rewrote it into, education saved my life. But it took me 30 years to realize it wasn't saving everyone else's. She loved it, emailed back in all caps. This is exactly what I wanted. Whoever wrote this gets me. I stared at that sentence for a long time, not because it was praise, but because it was the first time in my life my mother had said someone got her. And it was me, without knowing it was me. I sent the final draft, told my assistant to handle the payment, and requested an invitation to the gala as a +1 to one of our board member clients. I wasn't planning to make a scene. I wasn't planning anything at all, really. But what happened next? That I couldn't have planned even if I tried. I wasn't planning to go. Honestly, I wasn't even sure I could handle it. The idea of sitting in a crowd of wealthy donors, hearing my mother get praised for my words, while she barely remembered what I majored in? Yeah. No thanks. But then 2 things changed my mind. First, the speech went viral. Before it was even delivered, Claire Hartman, my mom if you forgot, posted a sneak peek quote on LinkedIn. My quote, the one I'd written in a daze of cold coffee and repressed childhood resentment. Being seen isn't the same as being understood, and silence doesn't mean absence. It means endurance. Thousands of likes, hundreds of comments. She was being hailed as a visionary. People were tagging Oprah. Freakin' Oprah. Second, my client turned friend, Elena, who was invited to the gala, offered to bring me as her plus one. "It'll be fun," she said, winking. "You can watch your mom become famous for your words. What's not to love?" So yeah, I went. I wore a navy dress I usually reserved for weddings, pulled my hair back, and did my best impression of someone who wasn't seconds from bolting out the fire exit. The venue was ridiculous. Crystal chandeliers, velvet walls, a string quartet playing Coldplay like it was Beethoven. Everyone was there in tuxedos and power lady suits, sipping drinks that cost more than my groceries for a week. And then came the introductions. When the MC said my mother's name, Claire Hartman, Emmy-winning storyteller, education advocate, and tonight's keynote speaker, the room erupted like they were announcing Michelle Obama. I just sat there, clutching my champagne flute, jaw tight. She took the stage. The lights hit her. She smiled like she belonged there. And maybe she did. Then she started to speak. And damn it if she didn't deliver it perfectly. Every pause, every inflection, even the breath after the line about silence being endurance. She hit it like a Broadway pro. People were crying. I watched a woman across the table dab her eyes and whisper, "This is the most powerful speech I've ever heard." Meanwhile, I was trying not to scream. But the real kicker? The line my mom added at the end. The one that wasn't in the draft. These words were born from the stories I've lived, the wounds I've carried, and the wisdom I now choose to pass down. My stomach dropped. She wasn't just taking credit for the delivery. She was claiming ownership. Like she'd written it from her own pain. Like she'd ever once acknowledged mine. I didn't know what I'd expected, really, but I hadn't expected that. Afterward, during the cocktail hour, she floated around the room like royalty. My brother was there too, hugging guests, name-dropping Harvard. Not one of them recognized me, until one did. A young woman, maybe early 20s, walked up to me near the dessert table. "Sorry," she said shyly. "Are you Cassidy Harper?" I blinked. "Yes?" Her face lit up. "I thought so. I saw your name once, on a webinar about narrative strategy last year. You said something about truth living outside the spotlight. That stuck with me." I stared at her, completely stunned. No one had ever approached me like that in real life. And then, before I could respond, I heard it. From the stage, the MC again. "We want to thank Claire Hartman once more. And to close out the night, she'll be reading a short passage from her upcoming book, written by her own hand." Wait, what? I turned to the stage. There she was, standing in front of a huge screen, with my words projected behind her. Pages from a manuscript she never wrote, pages from my pitch deck, pages that were never supposed to be public. I felt everything drain out of me, because I hadn't sent those files to her. I hadn't sent them to anyone but... Oh my God, it was my brother. The folder I'd once shared with him, a year ago, when he said he was curious about how I structure emotional arcs. He'd forwarded it to Mom, and she'd built an entire damn book proposal on it. I left without saying goodbye. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, trying to decide whether I was going to throw up or scream. I didn't do either. I just sat there. Hollow. I know some of you reading this might think I should confront her. Call a lawyer. Go public. Maybe I will. But right now, I just want to know, have any of you ever felt like your voice was taken before you even had a chance to use it? Because that's how this feels. Like I finally found the words. And someone else read them first. Louder. Shinier. And now, they think she wrote my life. I didn't sleep the night after the gala. Not because of the lights or the music or even the glass of Cabernet I'd downed too fast. I didn't sleep because I couldn't stop replaying that moment. My mother on stage, my words behind her, and the entire room thinking she wrote them. She didn't just borrow a line or two. She used entire pages from a book I hadn't even finished writing. A book I had never told her about. And the worst part? She believed it was hers now. She stood under those chandeliers, smiled into a $1,000 spotlight, and let people thank her for my life. The next morning, I called my brother. Straight to voicemail. So I texted, "We need to talk. Now." He called back 20 minutes later, sounding chipper like nothing had happened. "Hey, Cass, what's up?" "What's up?" I repeated, trying to hold it together. "You gave Mom my manuscript." Silence. Then, "Okay, yeah, but I didn't think you were really doing anything with it." That sentence. That fucking sentence. I didn't think you were really doing anything with it. Like my work didn't count unless it had a PR team behind it. "Did you even ask her what she was going to do with it?" I said, my voice trembling now. "She just said she wanted to read it. Said she missed your writing." Bullshit. My mom hasn't missed my writing since I stopped submitting scripts to her writers group in college. "She built a book deal out of it, Nathan," I snapped. "She's pitching it under her name." He had the audacity to sound confused. "Well, yeah, but she added some of her own stuff, right? You guys could do it together, like co-author." I hung up. I didn't slam the phone, didn't throw it across the room. I just set it down on the counter and stared at it like it might ring again and deliver an apology from a universe that clearly did not give a damn. That night, I opened my old draft. I hadn't touched it in months. The file still said, "Written in silence, Cassidy Harper, do not share." Funny, I read every word. Still raw, still honest, still mine. And then I did something I hadn't let myself do in a long, long time. I submitted it. Not to an agent, not to a publisher, but to a literary competition I'd been eyeing for years. One of the few that didn't care about follower counts or press kits. Just writing. Blind submission. No names, no resumes. I didn't even tell my assistant. 3 weeks later, I got an email. Subject, finalist notification, written in silence. I stared at it for 5 full minutes before opening it. Then I cried. Ugly cried. Not because I'd won, not yet, but because someone had read my words, really read them, and saw something worth recognizing. The announcement was set for a live-streamed event. Finalists would be revealed. Winners would be interviewed briefly, still anonymous until that moment. I didn't tell anyone. Not Elena. Not even the junior writers on my team. I just waited. The night of the announcement, I sat on my couch in sweats, laptop balanced on my knees, glass of wine in hand, heart racing like I was back in high school waiting for cast list results. And then I heard it. This year's nonfiction grand prize goes to Written in Silence. I covered my mouth. And the author is... And then, my name. My real name. Cassidy Harper. I thought that would be the twist. But no. The real twist came 5 minutes later. When I checked my email again and saw one unread message with the subject line that made my entire body go cold. Ree Hartman book deal, urgent contract update, from a major publisher. Addressed to Claire Hartman and Cassidy Harper. I opened it. The body of the email read, "Given the recent award announcement, we need to revisit authorship and proposal representation. The legal team will be reaching out for clarification. Until then, please refrain from further promotion." She'd used my name in her contract. She sold my story by pretending I was a co-author, without telling me. Which means she knew. She knew the whole time. And she just didn't think I'd find out. Or that I'd ever matter enough to push back. But guess what? Now the world knows my name. And Mom, you're about to learn what happens when the daughter you ignored learns how to write her own story. And makes damn sure you don't get to tell it. If you've ever had your truth stolen, reshaped, or erased by someone who was supposed to protect it, I see you. And you are not alone. The email from the publisher triggered a chain reaction I couldn't have predicted even if I tried. Within 48 hours, I got a call from the competition committee. They were concerned about potential intellectual property overlap and wanted to make sure my submission was solely mine. I sent them timestamps, original files, screenshots, and the raw draft buried in my Google Drive with a date that predated everything my mother had pitched. Meanwhile, her publisher went silent. And my mother? She showed up at my apartment, unannounced. Hair blown out, red lipstick on, like she was about to walk onto a talk show. "I think we should talk," she said, stepping inside before I could say yes or no. She launched into a monologue. How this was all a miscommunication. How the draft was meant to be a tribute to me. How she'd planned to loop me in at the right time. Every word felt rehearsed, like she was trying to stay ahead of the press. "You put my name on a contract," I said flatly. "Without my consent." She blinked. "I wanted you to get credit." "No," I said. "You wanted to keep the credit just close enough to justify the lie." She opened her mouth again, but I stopped her. "Mom, I spent my whole life writing things you never read. And now the first time you do read them, you try to make them yours?" Silence. It hung between us, bitter and heavy. Then she whispered, "But it worked, didn't it? You got your name out there." That was the moment I knew I wasn't dealing with a misunderstanding. I was dealing with someone who genuinely thought the ends justified her means. I filed a formal complaint with the publisher that week. The competition committee backed me fully. Their legal team got involved. Her contract canceled. Her book deal? Gone. And the press? Oh, the irony. The press that had once praised her as a voice of modern vulnerability now ran headlines like, "Acclaimed writer accused of using daughter's work without consent." She tried to spin it, of course. Said it was a family collaboration gone awry. Said she had deep respect for my voice. But people saw through it, especially when the actual book, my book, was published under my name and hit the nonfiction bestseller list 2 weeks in a row. At the launch event, I stood in front of a small but full room, signed copies for people who'd followed the story online and read the final page aloud. I didn't mention her name. Not once. That was the closure I needed. Not revenge, not headlines, just silence. My own silence. The kind I'd earned. She hasn't spoken to me since the fallout. But she sends my brother photos of interviews I've done, screenshots of articles about me. Sometimes he forwards them, sometimes he doesn't. It doesn't matter anymore. Because I no longer need her to see me to know I'm real. The girl who once wrote in the shadows is done whispering. Now, the whole damn room listens, and the story being told is finally mine. The lesson I learned? Sometimes justice doesn't come with handcuffs or courtroom drama. Sometimes it looks like taking back the mic and refusing to hand it over again. If any part of this hit home, or if someone's ever stolen your voice before you got to use it, feel free to share your story below. I genuinely like to hear it. And if you want to hear more stories like this, about finding your voice in a world that tries to overwrite it, you know where the subscribe button is.